Guys, Nick here, coming at you with a 10 p.m. night video. So, no light of day to kind of illuminate me. You'll have to deal with the low lamplight quality tonight. And I just want to kind of just dump my thoughts out to you guys as usual. Kind of take off from a certain starting point of the sort of trail of thoughts that I've been sort of mulling over for the day and follow it along and sort of record it for you guys. So, um, as much as I am not a big social media person, aside from being big on listening to stuff off of YouTube, of course, which you could argue makes me a big social media person in a sense, but media rather than, post related Facebook, Twitter, Instagram kind of media. And nonetheless, despite that, I decided to scroll through some Facebook earlier today. A little 10 p.m. decaf coffee because I really just have been fully ingratiated into the coffee drinking culture. Found this really interesting post on Facebook today by what I gathered, paragraphs and paragraphs long post. Um, from what I gathered was kind of one of these self-styled alternative, gentle, curated news sort of inspiration type platforms, like come here to get low impact, curated optimistic styled news, kind of a feel better news information place for people who want to stay informed but don't really, like, not in that way. They have a hard boundary and barrier to entry, which is really, even on a place like Facebook, I think, probably a really good market to drive at these days. Probably like, um, kind of, I don't know, one untouched but also undusted off kind of corner of news that probably will only grow and grow. Probably is not as popular now as it will possibly get in the future as more and more people, as this post referred to it, um, the whole sort of core premise of this post was exploring a lifestyle and a culture and a concept of, and wherein people are more collapse aware, societal collapse, etc., environmental collapse. And that was the whole crux of this. I'm talking more than a dozen, probably more than 2 dozen paragraph long sort of text diatribe from this news website about, you know, carrying on from things like get less screen time before bed, try and center yourself in your mental health and appreciation of nature and time in nature and natural awareness. You guys can kind of see where I'm coming from, and if you watched my last video, you'll sort of see this as sort of a continuation on a lot of the themes I was talking about last time. And this post um, sort of drove at a lot of similar themes to my last video. But I thought it was interesting to see the term collapse aware and actually see like a public sort of media company, no matter how indie or niche or small it may be. I don't know. Just as someone who's really not terribly chronically online, certainly not into some of the more neo culture um, minded places. I really have my own corners that I haunt on the internet and don't always branch out too much. Um, really interesting to see this more publicized discourse around, collapse aware people and behavior and thoughts. And once you're collapse aware, everything is different forever. And really, I kind of agree with that. Although I find at the same time, I find that a lot of the prescriptions on this post were not prescriptions I disagree with, but in general, I did feel like to give a review of the post, it seemed to proclaim to have prescriptions to help people stop thinking about the collapse, but then there were sort of all of the actual pieces of advice and detailed prescriptions were like things geared towards like making sure to intentionally develop like post collapse focus, thinking, and skills, which I don't think is a bad thing, but kind of antithetical to what the post claimed to want to do. I didn't disagree with any of it or dislike it really. I thought it was a really interesting subject matter overall. Kind of like encouraging people to. I just thought it was really interesting. I didn't think. I felt like there were lots of half measures, like encouragement to go forage one thing daily. I don't know. Maybe not half measures so much as by the time I got to piece of advice number 10, 11, and 12, I was kind of like, okay, we've gone on from learn a little bit about foraging, learn a little bit about hunting, learn how to handle firearms, learn how to cook, um, learn things about nature, and sort of moved on to like collect rainwater, compost, and I know that those things, individually, like live sustainably, but it kind of got to the level where I was just like, you've moved on from what the average person of average means, or even the median person of median means, can do, both on a money expenditure and a time expenditure. We all still live within the system. And if you want to get to the point where you just tell me, go forage, collect rainwater, use it on your crops, in your soil, in your garden, in your, and compost and do like, yeah, we would all love to do that. And if we had the money to have a compound and those resources and learn the know how and the knowledge and be able to focus on those things as work and not have to work, like, yeah, we would all be a lot better prepared in general for a collapse and living a better life inside of the society, even if it was a lot of work. But like, our society is literally geared around like, and I know that thinking of this kind of thing and pretending, and even in whatever practical ways we can, yes, like sort of living these fantasies, or even just like, yes, certainly embracing a lot of natural time and increasing that nature component in our lives is a good thing. Um, there is a hard line for the average and the median individual anywhere and in America. How much of that stuff is really practical and how much is just nice to think about as a fantasy. Um, you know, a lifestyle that might be nice but not really achievable in any kind of short or medium term. um, but pretty cool. I think people should learn hunting skills, foraging skills, plant and mushroom identification, fruit identification, basic foraging, all that kind of a thing. Um, the kinds of things that I'm not coming from a perspective of I do that stuff and I know just how to do it and I'm great and I'm gonna totally outlast you guys during the apocalypse perspective, but I come from a perspective of somebody who knows some of the basic to intermediate levels of some of those things and almost nothing beyond the super bare basics or practically nothing about some of those things myself because as I said, we all live within like the system, and I think in that sense we can all understand that like truly in a collapse we all just sort of bite the bullet and we can come to a sense of peace about that, like barring a gradual and I do believe a lot of what we're still looking at in the world and likely to see within our lifetimes comes at a more gradual pace. But if we're talking about some sort of humanity ending event, I mean something spontaneous, well, there you go. Humanity is ended. Like, none of us are holding our breath in the case of some huge meteoric or nuclear sort of worldwide shocking meltdown. I don't think we're holding our breath, anyways. But it also got me sort of thinking. I thought I'd start this discussion on this video, but also sort of package in. I like to come to these videos with the perspective of, what things do I sort of participate in, take some sense of pride in, um, you know, get some sort of reassurance from myself on a day to day basis. And again, going with the thought that we all do still live within the system, we all benefit from the system, and can also get used to, like that balance of skills we know within and without the artificial fiat currency capitalist centered society around us. And what would I tell to somebody my age or younger, or, approximate to my age or even much younger, but someone who just in general thinks I'm a young adult and I feel like there's so much I don't know and there's so much that I don't know that I don't know. So, in terms of working within the system types of things, like what can you sort of think of and improve on in your daily life? These are the things that have been in my life in the last 5 years to, yeah, I'd say 5 year range, um, that I've never gone back from. And I mean that in a good way. Like these types of things are really beneficial and have wrought some pretty good changes in my life, raised my self confidence and my, you sort of, how would you put it, just my sense of well being, within the system again. And I would definitely say, you know, conventional wisdom that your grandparents and even sometimes your parents might give you, sometimes just out the window, and certainly societal expectations out the window. I see taking advantage of, a lot of us have, we all have 9 to 5 jobs at least, um 40 hours or more at least a week that we need to go work. And so I always recommend people just take the ultimately simple, though it can seem daunting, steps of take basic advantage of your dental and your vision coverage. Go and find out what what minimum hours and health insurance, what minimum hours you have to work to have those things. If you work 40 and your company offers those things, you you almost certainly qualify. Um, for people who have lived in the pessimistic lifestyle, or even maybe just the naive, I'm a young adult, young 20 something. My teeth will never rot. My eyes will never decay. But all of a sudden, you realize that you're aging, starting to get a grasp, and time is passing by, starting to get a grasp on those types of basic things. Will have a huge boosting effect on sort of the floor of your quality of life, if you know what I mean. When you start to have those worries about, oh, there's something I think I should have been doing for years. Maybe, certainly, I should start getting to it, but like medical stuff is kind of daunting. If you're starting to have those worries, I would just say get them addressed and understand that a lot of times it's part of your compensation package, even in today's America, especially the bigger of a corporation you work for. These types of benefits are low cost, especially for a single young person, relatively speaking. And of course, this ties into a different sort of sort of lifestyle philosophy and mantra that's become deeply personal to me just in recent years that didn't used to be much on the table for me in terms of consideration right up until I turned around the age of 25, really. um which is that your money, you might think, hey, relatively cheap as some of these benefit things might be, if I'm living paycheck to paycheck and so close to the line, um, maybe I can't even afford a couple add-ons for dental, health, and vision that are 20, 40, and 60 bucks, maybe something close to 100 or more, a little more total every month because I'm down to the wire. And this is where I go back to what I said earlier about sort of throwing conventional wisdom and societal expectation out the window. Because again, if we are collapse aware people or whatever, if you ascribe to something like optimistic nihilism, like I do, if you're sort of a pragmatic but also a personal peace centric and minded person, for me personally, finding low cost living alternatives to just having my own apartment, on a pretty normal, if not still, um, in the range of salary where I'm certainly grateful for it, but I live on a relatively normal amount of money. For someone like that, addressing whatever concepts of shame you might have about taking low cost housing alternatives and just doing them for the sake of having more money to deploy, more left over to deploy every day, week, and month. Something like that. If you can address within yourself why you feel ashamed to find somebody trustworthy or several somebodies to have roommates with, a reliable, not just the first couple of roommates that I could find to share a little bit of cost of. And, depending on where you live in the world, also not saying I'm going to get two roommates, but we're going to get the nicest fucking place we can find, super ritzy, and then all of us still have to pay $1,000 a month. If you can come to terms with some of the emotional and mental, sometimes self shame or peer shame or the pressure or the sense that you have to be hyper independent, um, then you can take advantage of. Certainly, one of the biggest things is cost of housing for a lot of people. That prevents them from keeping a lot of money. Other things as well. Certainly, how often do you do phone upgrades? And we're getting into a lot of financial advice here, which the financial space is something I'm big in, although I hesitate to stake my channel on being, for one thing, super openly transparent about my own finances because I like privacy and Mr. I know everything about finances. But we are getting into a concept that's worked wonders for me, which is sort of, if you want to be highfalutin, like a lot of people in the YouTube finance space like to use often used and curated okay phrases to sound like you know a lot of info about finances. You might say we're talking about cost arbitrage. Find any way you can if you're more concerned about um, saving money and having more money to use and put up and preserve than just spend in hand and out of hand just like that. If you're more worried about retention than any self or external judgment, look at your car. Um, Look at how much you pay for it. Look at, am I financing? And if so, hopefully a very small chunk or something manageable. Um, Look at gas, look at maintenance, look at insurance, and all of these things. How soon will I need to replace it? And I'm not just saying, I'm saying find the intermediary between those things. I'm finishing off on financing something that was financed several years ago, and I may not have made the same exact choice. Um, certainly now I may not make the same exact choice in car and in amount finance than I did back then, but ultimately I still got pretty lucky with it. And even though I'm making financial progress in a lot of ways, and I'm coming to the end of paying off this car, it was a pretty, for the amount financed and the quality of car that I've gotten out of it, I found a pretty good overall median sort of compromise point there. So I'm not saying just go get a 200,000 mile '06 car and buy a new one every 2 months, but be reasonable, try and live within a reasonable margin and reduce where you can to the point where it's effective, but not to the point where, okay, maintenance on this old fossil is going to um, ultimately be as much as financing a new car. Try and find that reasonable point. And I recommend that people, once you're beyond that point, and then once you have a bit of a safety net, I recommend people have emergency savings. People throw out figures like 3 to 6 months, but it's highly dependent on the kind of lifestyle you live. If you've been able to substantively cut a lot of your costs down to the minimums, and it's not just a temporary thing, but if this is if those costs can remain low, again, we're talking maybe somebody in your early mid or late 20s or early 30s, somebody living more of a single independent lifestyle, not somebody who has to be a big provider or take care of dependents. Sometimes you can live on low costs like that for years at a time and have a lower emergency savings, but emergency savings nonetheless is like absolutely vital. And I'd say sit down with numbers at least twice a year and come up with what's reasonable. What emergencies will reasonably come up in my life, and how much do I need, um even if it's not a whole lot. Make sure that it would be effective for something that could come up. And finally, another skill I would say, you know, in terms of in the system, modern life sorts of skills, fiat currency, rooted skills is something that again seems intimidating and daunting, and can be when you don't know all of the terminology. Is investing, and what I would just tell people is cautiously dip your toe into, again, start with your employer, um, and if you are determined to be able to do things like taking advantage of work benefits, health, dental, vision, then there is almost no finer place beyond those basic things to start than a 401k at work. 5% up to 5% matching, um, and maybe even profit sharing if you work for a bigger corporation, and depending on the industry you work in. Those are not uncommon things, certainly up to 5% of matching. And again, if you're determined to take good advantage of these things, have money retention, and you're really enabling yourself to be able to do that with lowered costs in your life overall, then that's something you should reasonably be able to do. If you're intentional, I really believe in you always have time for what you make time for because it's a priority. And I believe that in the financial sense as well. It's not always easy, but then again, I'm not exactly talking to Mr. Although, even for someone in a situation like this, I think it is a framework that works, although it may look different than for a single person. But even Mr. 22 with 4 kids and a wife, So a lot of this is applicable to a certain extent. I would say if you are determined to do it and it's your priority to do it, those bases can and should be covered with no excuses. If you're not um, spending every raise and spending most of all the money you have left over after paying bills, if your bills are low and you're not just lifestyle consumption spending nonstop. The things we've covered so far are pretty much essential must do's. Like, if you're serious, these are the basic things you must do. And then, I recommend people get, um, again, optimistically but cautiously into some of the YouTube finance things. And I would openly recommend people like Humphrey Yang, the Money Guy Show. Dave Ramsey's not a bad place to start, but for people in the young millennial, almost any millennial crowd, even certainly Gen Z to Alpha, sort of outdated advice from someone who doesn't know how to speak to younger generations very much. But Dave's not a bad place to start if you have no other starting point. Um, who's the other one I want to mention? She's a woman. Erin Talks Money is a really great YouTube one as well. But to give you guys sort of a rare insight into my own financial picture and just general advice, if I were able to just sort of not tell you guys to take my word and my word alone and go out, not telling you take just what you've heard here and go act on it, but me being someone not directly in the financial space, if I could give you guys the most meaty and direct cut out of what I know, the synopsis of the most important info, I would tell you you want to become, again, if we're talking how do we get better financial security, a sense of security, a sense of stability, something we can look at, but sustainably, gradually. We're not talking overnight, but we're talking how can I build my life into something that feels a little bit better and like what I'm going to work for every day sort of sticks around to some degree and matters to some degree and will at least eventually benefit me to some degree. Um, we're talking index fund investing. We're talking start with the 5% matching, the 3, the 4, the 5% matching at work, and you're going to double your money. 100% guaranteed return on what you're putting in, up to the match, maybe some bonuses. If you're lucky in a certain sense, profit sharing, maybe you even get an ESOP from one of these employee owned structured types of places. That's company stock that appreciates and has a cash out value, but a longer vesting time for you to have full rights to it. And then look at how can I push that month by month and year by year? How can I extend the percent I'm putting in, but still enjoy my life, still have money left over for if I want to go out every now and then for food or for drinks, for hangouts with friends, movies, trips, vacations. But again, try and arbitrage those costs as well. You can do everything if you do everything relatively reasonably and relatively sustainably and not too often. Um, and as I say, index funds, we're talking baskets of stocks, one of the core positions everyone should have, and it's well covered. But this is something that being in the financial space will tell you is pretty much piece of advice number one about investing, not because it alone is always the ending point, but what we call the S&P 500, a 500 company index of the biggest and most boomingest, most financially large and sustainable and growing companies in the US. Core position to have, especially if you find a low cost one and whichever either 401k you're in, which oftentimes these have, I would say, pretty likely to be all pretty much always these places have these employer sponsored firms or accounts through your firm. Well, I have to admit, certainly in my case, have slightly higher expense ratios sometimes than things you can find like independently through an account like say a Roth IRA, um, where the choices are pretty much completely up to you, and you can do whatever funds you want. Nonetheless, um, an S&P fund is the way to go. They usually exist within your 401k. And then I would recommend to people do between depending on what you research and feel comfortable doing, probably a 15% to 30%. And I would more gear people with the way things are economically now towards a 20% to 30% international exposure. Um, because, you may have heard in old stuffy terms and movie references, kind of a reference people know but don't always understand what it even means. Diversifying your portfolio, it's real, and just having indexes in the first place covers a lot of that, but also geographically diversifying. And again, you guys sort of, if what I'm saying to you interests you and sort of gets to you in a sense, knowing that these types of things are worth putting your money into, you can reasonably shift your life to be able to do it. And over the course of, steady, gradual years of consistently doing these things, you'll start to see a compound interest effect, an effect of the money, and also on a personal level, your skills compounding. But the goal of this type of investing is to get interest that accrues. We would talk, if we've done this for 10 years, because we have to average out a lot of times the results you'll get. And past data doesn't guarantee future results. But what has been pretty well established is that someone who invests for 10 years in this way can expect, on average, a yearly 8 to 10% gain. And this gain then gives you gain, which gives you gain. And we're talking about exponential, not just the money I put in year after year on top of each other, but the money that money earns, earning more money to earn you more money. And if you're the type of person who can listen to my sort of scattershot, trying to be quick explanation about these types of things, and you see meat on this bone, you're interested, I recommend again, don't take immediate action based off of my encouragement, but start to think about these types of things and understand that if you are determined to approach them, not just I see the benefit, but I'm not sure, but I see the benefit and I want to know how I can be that person who doesn't have financial regrets about I didn't start investing early enough or I didn't mind certain benefits of work that we all should have more of and more robust health benefits, but nonetheless, oh, please excuse me. A lot of times people find that they could have done more earlier. I recommend you pick it up and run with it from this video and go research and find out exactly what you want to do. But these are a lot of the things that have been on my focus financially and career wise and otherwise the last 5 years, and I've regretted none of it. Um, Certainly, the learning and the skills implementation and the results I've been able to see personally. Um, Although this video is running a little bit long, I may as well run as much longer as I like at this point. I'll give you guys a little bit of context, zooming the lens out a little bit from just me rambling about what you gotta do, according to old Uncle Nick. Um, a lot of what I'm talking about and why I'm talking about suddenly um, investing in finances is because this is what I see as still some slice of the American dream. The American dream is one word, it's opportunity. And that opportunity is still available to people. Um, Given that we have to work, I would say again, if you're minded towards personal growth and success, you have no reason not to put the standard of yourself on yourself of if I have to work, then I also have to be responsible with my money and I have to find a way to grow it because there are still controls built into our system. As much discipline as it sometimes takes to rearrange and refortify your own finances and financial skills and knowledge and discipline. Um, this is actually starter stuff where people can start off at. Where people often can't start off at is putting 15 to 20% down on a property. And as much as the internet sort of encourages it and pushes it and even makes you feel like you should be house hacking and by 25 to 30 buy a duplex, rent it out to somebody else, get other people's money and start living off of it and be a landlord. These things are difficult, and real estate is not a bad thing, but real estate is not a starter for the average or the medium person. If you make around about 50,000 or less or a little more, like, real estate's not on the table as a starter. I'm going to be honest with you, unless you have, like, if that's what you're working with and that's the bulk of how you're going to generate money and that's the yearly salary range in which you're going to be able to preserve money off of, it's going to be years before you move up on the salary and before you've preserved any amount of money and social and financial security enough to do real estate. Real estate's not a starter with our generation like it was with previous generations. And this is kind of the thought pattern that is based in true fact. But oftentimes, when I think people our age, my age, 27 or younger, or older sometimes, think of opportunity, they think that was and would be opportunity for me, but I can't buy a house, or it's harder to buy a house. So, whoops, no financial opportunity. But frankly, investing is a starter place, and investing also is can be a different route. Investing in real estate go hand in hand with wealth building, but at the same time, like, especially in the economy we live in now, there's plenty of argument to be made sometimes in in favor of investing instead of real estate, depending on who you are. If you don't intend to have a family or a large family or have dependents, that is to say that the route of investing is a really good starter thing for wealth and for ownership, but it is not just a starting point. It can really carry you your whole life long and be, even if you never get into real estate, it can be your replacement or something where eventually you get into real estate hand in hand with your investing, but you built so much in the time that you couldn't do real estate because you did investing. Um, so yeah, there is old man Uncle Nick's decaf coffee fueled diatribe, and I started talking about some Facebook article I read from about collapse minded people, but yeah, I really just hope that anyone who bothered to listen for this long really kind of enjoyed somebody who is perhaps certainly collapse aware, somebody who, it's true once you sort of understand and are not oblivious to, we are on, how would I put it? We are sort of the last remnants of people who will live like how we have lived, and something big is coming, in decades to come. Something, things are unsustainable, and we're expecting big things economically, socially, in the world. That's all I can really say, but I feel that we all kind of feel it. Those are the sorts of things that I think about, and the pieces of advice um, that I've taken, that I've explored, the areas of knowledge that I've gone into, and I talked mostly about in system stuff. The things that have made me feel like I am building something. And those are the pieces of advice that I would say have borne so much fruit for me already, even in my only several years of having started these things, that I would not hesitate to recommend these steps and plans of action, as sustainably as you can do them and as gradually as you have to, as slowly as it's needed for it to stick. To anybody who's a young adult and wants to know basically what should I do, what's important, what matters, and what's worth it. Holy moly, I'm tired. Probably, obviously. So, anybody who listened, thanks a ton for hanging in there and listening. And any thoughts you have of any kind, even if they make no damn sense. Somebody commented on my last video, and it probably had to be a bot or AI or a troll. They posted the comment, "Turnip lips don't bleed" or something. And I didn't fucking understand anything about what that was supposed to mean to me, but I still love reacted it and hearted it and didn't question it because it still meant something to me. It was actually quite poetic. So, you guys let me know what you think. Give it a like if you liked. Um, and yeah, thanks for watching. um, Sleepy late night rant. And you guys have a good one. Talk to you next time. Bye.